Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into endpoint security.
That's good.
And you know it's interesting because we have all these devices connecting to networks these days. Like
Right.
laptops and smartphones
Because
and
smart refrigerators even.
yeah, even our smart fridges. It's like we're living in a sci-fi movie, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
But all this connectivity also means new risks.
Absolutely. And that's really what endpoint security is all about.
Okay.
It's about protecting those individual devices, those endpoints that can be gateways to networks and to our data.
Hmm.
You know, it's interesting how for years the focus was on firewalls and network security,
Right.
but now it's shifting more and more towards these endpoints.
Okay.
So because they're becoming the prime targets for attackers.
So when we say endpoint, are we just talking about laptops and smartphones, or is there more to it?
Oh, there's definitely more to it.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. We've got tablets, smartwatches, even those internet-connected security cameras,
Oh, yeah.
and thermostats in our homes.
Right.
All of these devices are potential entry points for cybercriminals.
So it's not just about protecting our work computers anymore, right? It's about securing our entire digital lives.
Exactly.
Okay, so then why are these endpoints so vulnerable? Is it just because there are so many of them now?
I mean, that's definitely part of it. The more devices we have, the wider the attack surface becomes.
Mhm.
But there's also the fact that endpoints are often used outside of that controlled environment of a corporate network.
That's true.
You know, connecting to public Wi-Fi or using personal accounts that might not have the same level of security.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
We might be super careful at work,
right.
but then use the same device to check our personal email at a coffee shop or something.
Exactly. And that's where the risk comes in.
Yeah, that is kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. And the sources you shared highlighted some pretty alarming statistics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, endpoint attacks have increased by over 200% in the past year.
Wow.
It's a huge jump. And those attacks can have some pretty serious consequences.
Like what kinds of consequences?
Well, we could be talking data breaches, financial losses, disruption of services.
Yeah.
Remember that recent incident where a casino got hacked through a smart thermometer in their fish tank?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
It's a perfect example of how these seemingly harmless devices can be vulnerable.
Okay, so that's enough to make anyone paranoid.
Right.
So let's talk about the actual threats themselves.
Okay.
The sources mention things like malware phishing exploits.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give us a quick overview of what those are
Sure.
and how they target endpoints?
So malware, that's just the broad term for any malicious software
Right.
designed to disrupt your system.
Mm.
We're not just talking about classic viruses anymore, you know.
Right.
Think ransomware that locks you out of your files,
Uh-huh.
or spyware that secretly monitors your activity and steals your information.
Okay.
What's really concerning is the rise of fileless malware.
Fileless malware.
Yeah, it's malware that doesn't rely on traditional files,
Oh, wow.
so it makes it much harder to detect.
So it's not enough to just have a good antivirus program anymore.
Antivirus is still important, but it's just one layer of defense.
Okay.
Now, phishing.
Right.
That's one of the most common ways attackers target endpoints.
Hmm.
Basically, they trick users into clicking on malicious links or opening infected attachments.
Oh, those like you've won the lottery emails that we all get.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But the tactics are definitely becoming much more sophisticated.
Oh, I bet.
Cyber criminals are getting really good at crafting targeted phishing attacks
Hmm.
that are personalized and much harder to spot.
So how would that work?
Well, they might spoof an email from your boss,
Oh.
asking you to review a document or something.
And you think it's legit?
Right. It's all about social engineering,
Wow.
playing on our trust and our desire to help.
So even savvy users can fall victim if they're not careful.
Exactly.
Okay, what about those exploits? That sounds like something out of a hacker movie.
Yeah, exploits are a bit more technical.
Yeah.
You take advantage of vulnerabilities in software code. It's like a weak spot in your armor that an attacker can use to break through.
Mm-hmm.
These vulnerabilities could exist in your operating system, your web browser,
Right.
any application you use, really.
And hackers are constantly searching for those vulnerabilities, right?
Oh, absolutely, like digital treasure hunters.
So then we need to be one step ahead of them.
Right, and that's why it's so important to keep your software up to date, because
Okay.
those updates include patches that fix these vulnerabilities.
So software updates, got it.
Now, unauthorized access.
Is that just hackers guessing passwords or is it more complicated?
It can be that, but it's often more complex than that.
Okay.
Unauthorized access can happen through stolen credentials, weak passwords,
Hmm.
or even misconfigured systems that leave certain ports open to attack.
So it's not just about keeping our passwords safe.
Right.
It's about making sure the entire system is secure.
Exactly. It's like building a fortress.
Oh, yeah.
You need strong walls, but you also need secure gates, watchful guards,
Hmm.
multiple layers of defense.
And that brings us to solutions for endpoint security.
Exactly.
Perfect. So we've laid out the battlefield.
Right.
Now it's time to talk weapons. What are some of the strategies and tools that organizations and individuals can use to protect their endpoints?
Well, one of the foundational elements, and remember that analogy of the fortress,
Right.
it's good old-fashioned software updates.
Okay.
You know, we've all seen those pop-ups telling us to update our operating systems and applications.
Mm-hmm.
It's tempting to ignore them, but those updates contain vital security patches
Right.
that address those vulnerabilities.
So those software updates are kind of like patching up the holes in our armor before a hacker can exploit them.
Exactly. A simple step, but incredibly important.
Got it. What else?
You need a robust antivirus and anti-malware solution.
Okay.
These are your frontline soldiers constantly scanning your system for those malicious files and quarantining or removing them.
So they're like digital bouncers keeping out the riffraff.
Exactly.
But what happens when a threat is more sophisticated, like those fileless malware attacks you mentioned?
Right. Well, traditional antivirus software relies on recognizing known malware signatures,
Mm.
but fileless attacks operate in memory,
Oh, right.
so they're harder to detect.
So you need more advanced approach then.
You do think of firewalls as the gatekeepers of your network.
Okay.
They control the flow of traffic in and out of your device,
Uh-huh.
blocking any suspicious connections based on predefined rules.
So, for example.
You could have a rule that says no traffic from this particular country known for cyberattacks.
Right.
The firewall will automatically block any connections from that region.
So how does a firewall know what's suspicious? Does it analyze every piece of data that comes in?
They operate at different levels. Some firewalls look at basic information like the source and destination of the traffic, while others actually delve deeper and examine the content of data packets.
Oh, wow.
It gets a little tricky because you want to block malicious traffic without disrupting legitimate connections.
You don't want your firewall to be so strict that it blocks your email or websites you need for work.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Okay, so that's where expertise comes in,
Exactly.
to configure those firewalls correctly.
Cybersecurity professionals can configure firewalls to meet the specific needs of an organization or an individual.
Okay, so we've got software updates, antivirus, and firewalls.
Yeah.
What else should we be thinking about?
Another crucial element is identity and access management, or IAM.
IAM, okay.
This is all about controlling who has access to what,
Okay.
based on their role and permissions.
So, for example,
In a company, you wouldn't want an intern to have access to the same sensitive data as the CEO.
right, different levels of access.
Exactly.
But how does that apply to individuals? I don't have employees on my laptop.
The principles are the same. Think about your online accounts.
Hmm.
Do you use the same password for everything?
Maybe.
That's a recipe for disaster. IAM principles encourage strong, unique passwords for each account.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even using multi-factor authentication,
Yeah.
where you need a second form of verification to log in.
Right, like a code sent to your phone or email.
Exactly. So even if someone steals your password, they can't access your account without that second step.
So it's like having a two-step lock on your front door.
Exactly.
Much harder to break in.
Right.
Okay, so strong passwords, multi-factor authentication.
Hmm.
Are we starting to sound like cybersecurity experts yet?
We're getting there, but it's not just about the technical measures.
Oh, okay. What else is there?
Being mindful of what you share online is incredibly crucial.
Okay.
Think twice before posting sensitive personal information on social media.
Right.
Attackers can use that information to target you with phishing attacks or even steal your identity.
It's easy to forget that everything we post online can be seen by potentially anyone.
It's true, so less is more when it comes to sharing personal details.
Good point.
Yeah.
Be cautious when using public Wi-Fi too, right?
Yes. Those free hotspots can be risky.
I've heard that hackers can set up fake Wi-Fi networks to steal your data.
That's true, and even legitimate public networks often lack strong security measures.
So what's the solution? Should we just avoid public Wi-Fi altogether?
Ideally, yes. But if you must use it, consider a VPN.
A VPN. Okay, I've heard of those, but I'm not really sure how they work.
A VPN is basically a tunnel that encrypts your internet traffic. making it much harder for hackers to spy on your activity.
So even if someone's snooping on the network, they can't see what I'm doing.
Exactly. And that's especially important when you're accessing sensitive information.
Right, like online banking or shopping websites.
Right.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
What about those antivirus and anti-malware programs? Should we install those on our personal devices too?
Absolutely. Just like with your work computers, it's essential to have a reputable security solution on your personal devices as well.
Right.
They act as a safety net, catching those malicious programs before they can do any damage.
There are so many options out there, though. Any advice on choosing the right one?
Do your research read reviews, compare features, and look for a solution that offers comprehensive protection?
Okay, so don't just download the first one you see.
Right.
Take some time to find one that meets your needs.
Exactly.
Any other essential tips we should be aware of?
Regular backups are your best friend.
Oh, yeah, backups. I always forget about those.
It's like an insurance policy for your digital life.
Okay.
If your device is ever lost, stolen, or hit with ransomware,
Right.
having backups ensures you don't lose all of your important files.
Because even with all these security measures in place, things can still go wrong.
Exactly.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Right. Back up your devices regularly to an external hard drive or a secure cloud storage service.
Okay, I'll have to do that. So backups are important. Any other final thoughts?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be proactive about your digital well-being.
Oh.
Educate yourself. Stay informed about the latest threats and scams. Think critically about the websites you visit and the links you click.
So it's not just about setting up security software and forgetting about it.
Right.
It's about constantly learning, adapting, and being vigilant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're all responsible for our own digital security. Right. And by working together, sharing knowledge and being proactive, we can create a safer online environment for everyone.
I like that. That's a great point.
Yes.
So technology is always evolving,
Yeah,
which means the threats are evolving too.
that's right.
So what can we expect to see on the horizon when it comes to endpoint security?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into deeper when we come back for part 2 of this deep dive.
Awesome. Can't wait. Until then, keep those firewalls up and those passwords strong.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Again.
Welcome back, everyone. So in part 1, we were talking about this idea of our digital lives expanding.
Right.
Beyond just our work computers, we're using our personal phones for work, emails, tablets for banking, and it's creating this bigger target for cyber criminals.
Yeah, it's definitely blurring those lines between work and personal devices.
Right.
Which raises a lot of questions about how we approach security in our everyday lives.
Yeah, because it's not as simple as just relying on our company's IT department anymore, right?
Right, exactly.
So for those of us who aren't cybersecurity experts, what are some practical things we can do to boost our endpoint security at home? Where do we even begin?
Well, I think the foundation of good security is awareness.
Okay.
Really understanding the threats, how they work, and recognizing those red flags when you see them.
So it's not just about installing the latest software.
Right.
It's about actually being smart and informed about the risks.
Exactly.
I know I'm guilty of just clicking on links sometimes without thinking.
We all are. That's why it's so important to stay up to date on those latest scams and phishing tactics.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, for example, did you know that attackers are now using QR codes to spread malware?
QR codes. Really?
Yeah. You scan what looks like a harmless code for a restaurant menu or something,
Uh-huh.
and suddenly you've downloaded a malicious program onto your phone.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
It really highlights how we need to be extra cautious.
Okay, so awareness is key. What else can we do?
Well, remember those software updates we talked about?
Yeah.
That applies to our personal devices as well.
Okay.
Those updates aren't just about new features. They often include important security patches
Right.
that fix vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit.
Okay, so no more ignoring those update notifications,
Exactly.
no matter how annoying they might be. What about passwords? We all know they're important.
Yes.
But who can remember a dozen different complex passwords for all their accounts?
You're right. It's definitely a challenge. But using those strong, unique passwords is one of the simplest yet most effective ways to protect your accounts.
Yeah, but how do you keep track of them all?
That's where password managers come in.
Okay, I've been hesitant to use one of those. Are they really safe?
A good password manager will encrypt your passwords and store them securely. So you only need to remember one master password.
Okay,
It's much safer than reusing the same weak password across multiple accounts.
that makes sense.
And plus, a lot of password managers can even generate strong random passwords for you.
So you don't even have to think about it.
Exactly.
That actually sounds pretty convenient.
It is.
I might have to look into that. What else should we be doing to lock down our accounts?
Enable multi-factor authentication whenever possible.
Okay.
It just adds that extra layer of security by requiring a code from your phone or email
Right.
in addition to your password.
So even if they steal your password, they can't get in.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. Are we starting to sound like cybersecurity experts yet?
We're getting there, but remember, it's not just about technical measures.
Right, right. Okay, so what else is there?
Being mindful of what you share online is so important.
Okay.
Think twice before posting sensitive personal information on social media.
Yeah.
Attackers can use that information to target you with phishing attacks or even steal your identity.
Yeah. It's easy to forget that everything we post online can be seen by pretty much anyone.
It's true, so less is more when it comes to sharing personal details.
Less is more.
Okay.
And what about public Wi-Fi? We were talking about that before.
Yes, public Wi-Fi can be risky.
I've heard that hackers can set up fake Wi-Fi networks to steal your data. Is that a real thing?
It is. And even legitimate public networks often lack strong security measures, making it easier for attackers to intercept your traffic.
So should we just avoid public Wi-Fi altogether then?
If you can, that's the ideal.
Yeah.
But if you have to use it, consider using a VPN.
A VPN. Okay. I've heard of VPNs, but I'm not really sure how they work.
A VPN is basically a tunnel that encrypts your internet traffic.
Okay.
So it makes it much harder for hackers to spy on your activity.
So even if someone is snooping on the network, they can't see what I'm doing.
Exactly. And that's especially important when you're accessing sensitive information.
Right, like online banking or shopping websites.
Exactly.
That's a good tip. What about antivirus and anti-malware programs? Do you recommend installing those on our personal devices too?
Absolutely. Just like with work computers, having a reputable security solution on your personal devices is essential.
Okay.
It acts as a safety net, catching those malicious programs before they can do any damage.
But there are so many options out there. Any advice on how to choose the right one?
Do your research, read reviews, compare features, and look for a solution that offers comprehensive protection against malware, phishing, and other threats.
So don't just download the first one you see.
Right.
Take some time to find one that fits your needs.
Exactly.
Any other essential tips?
Regular backups are your best friend.
Backups. Oh yeah, I always forget about those.
It's like an insurance policy for your digital life.
Yeah.
If your device is ever lost or stolen or hit with ransomware, having those backups ensures you don't lose your precious photos, documents, or other important files.
Right, because even with all these security measures in place, things can still happen.
Exactly. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Better to be safe than sorry.
So back up your devices regularly to an external hard drive or a secure cloud storage service.
I'll have to do that. Okay, so backups are important. What about any final thoughts for this part?
I think the most important thing is to be proactive about your digital well-being.
Okay, how do we do that?
Educate yourself. Stay informed about those latest threats and scams. And think critically about the websites you visit and the links you click.
So it's not just about setting it and forgetting it.
Right. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and being vigilant.
We're all responsible for our own digital security.
Exactly. And by working together, sharing knowledge, and being proactive, we can create a safer online environment for everyone.
That's a great point. And, technology is always evolving.
Right.
Which means the threats are evolving too.
That's right.
So what can we expect to see on the horizon when it comes to endpoint security? What's coming next?
That's an excellent question, and one that we'll dive into much deeper when we come back for part 3 of this episode.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear it. We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, we're back and ready to talk about the future. In parts 1 and 2, we covered the basics of endpoint security, the threats, the solutions, and even how we can apply all that to our personal lives.
Right.
But as we all know, technology never stands still.
It definitely doesn't. The world of cybersecurity is always evolving with new threats emerging all the time.
So let's shift our focus to the horizon.
Okay.
What trends and technologies are shaping the future of endpoint security? What can we expect to see in the coming years?
Well, one of the big ones that keeps coming up is artificial intelligence.
AI?
Yeah. It seems like AI is revolutionizing everything these days.
It really does.
From self-driving cars to medicine.
Right.
But it's having a major impact on endpoint security as well.
Okay, so how is AI changing the game when it comes to endpoint security?
AI is a game changer because it can analyze huge amounts of data much faster than any human could. So it can identify patterns and anomalies that might signal a threat.
So it's like having a super smart security guard,
Yeah.
constantly watching your systems, looking for anything suspicious.
That's a good way to put it. But it goes beyond just detection.
Oh, really?
AI can also automate responses to threats.
Okay.
So it can isolate infected devices or quarantine malicious files
Wow.
before they can even do any damage.
So it's almost like having a precognitive defense system
Right.
that can anticipate attacks before they happen.
We're not quite there yet,
Got
but AI is definitely moving us in that direction.
Right.
It can learn from past attacks, adapt to new tactics, and just constantly refine its defenses.
That's pretty amazing.
Right.
So AI is a big one. What other trends are out there?
Another significant shift is towards what's called a zero-trust security model.
Zero trust. That sounds kind of intense.
It does. But it's not about being strict, it's about being realistic.
Okay.
You see, traditional security models operate on the assumption that anything inside the network is trustworthy. Zero trust flips that on its head.
So instead of assuming everything is safe,
Right.
you assume everything is potentially a threat.
Exactly. Zero trust assumes that any device, any user, any connection could be compromised.
Wow.
So every access request is verified,
Yeah.
no matter where it originates.
So it's like having a security checkpoint at every door,
Yeah.
constantly checking credentials and permissions.
Exactly. And this is becoming more and more important as, more people are working remotely,
Right.
accessing company resources from different devices and locations.
Right. So it makes sense in this world where the traditional office perimeter doesn't really exist anymore.
Right.
Okay, so AI and zero trust, those are two big ones.
Yeah.
What else is on the horizon?
Well, we can't talk about the future of endpoint security without mentioning the Internet of Things.
The IoT.
Yeah. All those internet-connected devices.
Right. We talked about this a bit before.
We did.
Our smart fridges, our voice assistants, all that stuff.
Exactly.
But how does this impact endpoint security?
As more devices connect to the Internet,
Mm-hmm.
the potential attack surface grows exponentially.
More entry points.
Each one of those devices is a potential entry point for a hacker.
So it's not just about securing our computers and smartphones anymore.
Right.
It's about securing our entire digital ecosystem.
Exactly. And that's a huge challenge because traditional endpoint security solutions weren't designed for this volume of devices.
Right.
And the diversity of these IoT devices.
But what's the solution? How do we protect all of these devices?
Well, we're starting to see the emergence of specialized IoT security platforms that are specifically designed to address the unique challenges of these devices.
So what kinds of challenges are we talking about?
Well, they have things like limited processing power,
Uh-huh.
diverse communication protocols,
Right.
and a lot of IoT devices are designed to be always on,
Right.
which makes it harder to patch them without disrupting their functionality.
So securing the IoT is a whole different ballgame.
It is, but it's a game we need to play because the potential consequences of insecure IoT devices are huge.
Yeah. Can you give us an example?
Imagine a hacker gaining control of your smart lock or your security cameras.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little scary.
It is. It's a real threat.
So with all of these new threats and technologies, it can feel a little overwhelming.
Right.
So what can the average person do to stay ahead of the curve and protect themselves?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to remember that knowledge is power.
Okay.
Stay informed about these emerging threats and technologies.
So do your research.
Exactly. There are lots of great resources available online, industry blogs, podcasts like this one,
Right.
that can help you stay up to date.
Awareness is always the first line of defense.
It is.
What else can we do?
Don't be afraid to embrace new technologies. We've been talking about AI and zero trust.
Right.
And while those might seem complex, they're already being integrated into a lot of consumer-facing security products.
So things like password managers, antivirus software,
Huh?
even smart home security systems.
Exactly. They're becoming more sophisticated and AI-powered.
So it's not all doom and gloom. There's reason to be optimistic about the future of endpoint security.
Absolutely. I think so. The challenges are real, but so are the opportunities.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of innovation in this space, and as long as we remain vigilant, informed, and proactive, we can definitely stay ahead of the threats.
Okay, that's good to hear. So as we wrap up this deep dive into endpoint security, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway is that security is a shared responsibility.
Okay.
It's not just up to IT departments or cybersecurity professionals.
Right.
We all have a role to play in protecting ourselves and our digital lives.
So true. By working together, being aware, and taking those proactive measures we talked about,
Yes.
we can create a safer, more secure digital world for everyone.
Well said.
And that's a wrap for this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.